Do you think you really know the people around you? What if that innocent child you adopted was hiding the biggest secret of all? Today, you'll follow the story of Anna and Marcos, a couple who discovered something terrifying about their adopted daughter. A secret that would change their lives forever. Get ready for a revelation that will leave you speechless. It was a rainy afternoon when Anna and Marcos made the decision that would change their lives forever. The couple, who had already faced the pain of losing a child in a tragic accident, decided that it was time to try to fill the void in their hearts. Adoption seemed like the right path. They wanted to give love and a home to a child in need, and perhaps in doing so, they could also begin to heal from the grief that had haunted them since their loss. After months of interviews, orphanage visits, and legal processes, the big day had arrived. They were about to meet their future daughter. The orphanage was an old building with large brick walls and small windows that allowed little light to enter. That day, the atmosphere felt even gloomier due to the constant rain, creating small puddles along the path leading to the main entrance. The couple was greeted by the orphanage's director, a middle-aged woman with tired eyes and a smile that reflected years of hard work. She guided them through the damp hallways, explaining the background of the girl they were about to meet. Laura is a very special child, the director said as they walked. She has a sad story, but is incredibly resilient. She's only 10 years old, but she's already been through so much hardship. She lost her parents in a car accident and was found wandering the streets alone. Since then, she's lived with us. Anna and Marcos exchanged sympathetic glances. The director's words tugged at their hearts, strengthening their resolve that they were doing the right thing. When they arrived at the common room, they spotted Laura. She was sitting in a small wooden chair, playing alone with an old teddy bear. Her long brown hair was tied into two neat braids that swayed as she gently moved her head. When she saw the couple enter, Laura shyly looked up but then offered a faint smile. Her face was delicate, with large brown eyes that radiated both innocence and a hidden sadness. She looked fragile, but there was something in her demeanor that hinted at a maturity beyond her years. "Hi, Laura," Anna said softly, kneeling down in front of the girl. "We're so happy to meet you." Laura smiled again, still a bit shy, but her expression softened as she saw the kindness in Anna's eyes. After a few formal interactions with the orphanage staff, the couple decided they would bring Laura home. The paperwork was quickly finalized as they had been prepared for months. As they left the orphanage, Laura clutched Anna's hand tightly, while Marcos carried a small suitcase with the few belongings the girl owned. The car ride back home was quiet, with only the sound of rain tapping against the windows. When they arrived at their house, Laura looked curiously at the large garden and the brick facade. Anna and Marcos lived in a spacious home, filled with natural light and surrounded by trees in the backyard. It was the perfect place for a child to play and grow up freely. Marcos opened the front door with an excited smile. "Welcome to your new home, Laura." She stepped inside cautiously, observing every detail of the house. There was a grand staircase leading to the bedrooms, a cozy living room, and a faint smell of coffee coming from the kitchen. Anna lovingly showed Laura the room they had prepared for her. A small bed with a colorful quilt, toys scattered around the floor, and a large window overlooking the garden. For the first time that day, Laura smiled genuinely. It seemed like she had finally found a place to belong. The days that followed were a period of adjustment. Laura was polite, calm, and always helpful. If the house was quiet, it was because she was either reading or playing with her teddy bear, which seemed to be her only companion for a long time. Anna and Marcos felt relieved to see how well Laura was behaving and how she was adapting to the new routine. They wanted to offer her everything she didn't have before: love, stability, and safety. But soon, small details began to feel off. Laura didn't act quite like a typical 10-year-old. She was incredibly independent for her age, rarely asking for help or company, and her way of speaking was far too mature, almost calculated. Anna, worried, mentioned it to Marcos one night while they prepared dinner. "Do you think it's just because of what she's been through, or do you think she's hiding something from us?" Marcos, always the rational one, tried to calm his wife. "Give her time, Anna. She's been through a lot. We need to be patient and continue supporting her." Despite these small concerns, the couple continued to pour all their love and care into their new daughter. As the weeks passed, Laura seemed more and more integrated into the family. Yet behind the polite smiles and well-behaved demeanor, something deeper was lurking. And soon, it would begin to reveal itself. The first few days at Anna and Marcos's house were peaceful. Laura seemed like any other child, curious, shy, but eager to explore the new world around her. On her first morning, she already knew exactly where everything was in the kitchen, as if she had lived there for much longer. Anna, sitting at the table with a cup of coffee, watched Laura sip her milk quietly. "Do you like it here, sweetie?" she asked. Laura looked up from her cup and gave a small smile, nodding. Marcos, who left for work early every day, was surprised at how quickly Laura seemed to adapt. "She behaves so well. It's like she's never been in an orphanage," he commented to Anna one evening while they were preparing dinner. Anna agreed, but something still gnawed at her. "Yes, but I feel like she's too mature. She doesn't ask silly questions like other kids, doesn't run around the house. It's like she's always in control." Marcos laughed, thinking Anna was just nervous about the new family dynamics. "That's great. We didn't want a child who'd cause us trouble, did we? She seems like a real little adult." But as the days went by, Anna couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Laura rarely displayed any real emotion. She always had the same polite smile on her face and seemed too calculated, even in the smallest gestures, like sitting down for dinner or organizing her toys. When Anna took her outside to play in the garden, Laura preferred to sit quietly and read, rather than run around like a typical child. "I prefer to be quiet," Laura would say, always in that calm, polished tone. One night, Anna decided to read a bedtime story to Laura, hoping to establish a motherly ritual. Laura, lying in bed, listened attentively as Anna read a fairy tale. But Anna noticed something unsettling in the girl's eyes. There was no enchantment or curiosity. When the story ended, Laura looked at her and said, "These stories are for little kids. I prefer things that are more grown up." Anna, surprised, replied, "But you're still a child, Laura." And once again that strange, knowing smile appeared on the girl's face. "I'm not like other children." The next morning, something even stranger happened. Anna was in the kitchen when she heard noises coming from Laura's room. When she opened the door, she found Laura in the bathroom, playing with Anna's makeup. The girl was applying a bold lipstick, staring at her reflection with an expression Anna had never seen before. It wasn't the curiosity of a child, but the vanity of someone much older. "What are you doing?" Anna asked, startled. Laura turned slowly, unbothered, and replied calmly, "I just wanted to try it. I saw you doing it the other day." A chill ran down Anna's spine, but she said nothing. She knew some girls like to play with makeup, but the way Laura acted seemed far beyond a childish game. The girl was observing her, as if studying her reactions, always with that attentive look. The days passed, and more peculiarities started to pile up. Marcos, arriving home late from work, rarely noticed the oddities in Laura's behavior. He still saw her as a shy child, simply adjusting to her new life. Anna, on the other hand, couldn't ignore the signs. One day, while she was organizing the kitchen cabinets, she stumbled upon a small pile of letters hidden in one of Laura's old toy boxes. The letters were all written in English, which Anna knew Laura didn't speak. Opening them, she found they were addressed to various adoption agencies across the country. The dates were old, but the content indicated that Laura, or whoever had been using that name, had passed through several orphanages and adoption processes. This discovery set off alarm bells in Anna's mind. How could a 10-year-old girl have these letters? And why would she hide them? Anna decided not to confront Laura immediately, but from that moment on, she began watching every move the girl made even more closely. One quiet Sunday afternoon, as Anna prepared lunch, Laura walked into the kitchen and offered to help. "Can I chop the vegetables?" she asked, with the same calm smile as always. Hesitant, Anna handed her a small knife, thinking it might be good to let her feel useful. But what happened next sent shivers down Anna's spine. Laura held the knife with such skill that she seemed far more experienced than a typical child. Her movements were quick and precise, chopping the vegetables with a dexterity that didn't match her age. "Who taught you to do this?" Anna asked, trying to sound casual. Without looking up from the cutting board, Laura replied, "I learned by watching you." The answer could have been innocent, but something in the girl's tone was unsettling. Anna decided not to tell Marcos, at least not yet. She didn't want him to think she was overreacting or being overprotective, but deep down, she knew something was very wrong. The days continued, and with them, the strange atmosphere around Laura intensified. Her behavior became more and more like that of someone who didn't belong in a child's body. Her gestures, her words, everything seemed rehearsed, carefully thought out. Anna found it increasingly difficult to sleep, feeling constantly on edge, as if there was a secret lurking just beneath the surface. Then one night, Laura began complaining of stomach pains again. At first, Anna thought it was just a typical childhood illness, but the situation quickly worsened. Laura began to struggle to breathe, and her previously thin and delicate belly swelled visibly. Panicking, Anna called Marcos, and they rushed Laura to the hospital. In the car, as the girl groaned in pain in the back seat, Anna glanced at her through the rearview mirror and noticed something strange in Laura's eyes. It wasn't fear or pain, but something Anna couldn't quite describe. Something was about to be revealed, and Anna felt that nothing would ever be the same after that night. After the scare from the previous night, Laura seemed to recover quickly. At the hospital, the doctors found nothing to explain the sudden swelling, suggesting it might have been just a digestive reaction. However, for Anna and Marcos, that night left a lasting mark. Marcos tried to move on, treating the episode as an isolated event, but Anna couldn't shake the feeling that something much larger was unfolding. In the following days, Anna continued to observe Laura closely. There was something deeply unsettling about the girl's behavior. Her posture was always impeccable, and her movements were too precise, as if they were calculated at every moment. This wasn't how a 10-year-old was supposed to behave, no matter how well-mannered. Furthermore, Laura seemed to know more than she should. One day, while Anna was preparing lunch, Laura mentioned a French dessert recipe, describing the steps in such detail that it stunned Anna. "Where did you learn that?" she asked, hiding her surprise. Laura shrugged, as if it were no big deal. "I read it in a book." Although Marcos tried to reassure Anna, she was convinced something was wrong. Every day, the unsettling feeling grew. Laura always seemed 2 steps ahead, anticipating situations in ways a normal child wouldn't. On top of that, her interactions with other children were practically non-existent. When Anna took her to the park, Laura refused to play with the other kids, preferring to sit on a bench alone, with that distant, cold gaze that unnerved Anna. One quiet afternoon, Anna was tidying Laura's room when she noticed something odd. Hidden in a drawer, beneath a pile of clothes, was a small metal box. Curiously, Anna opened it and found something that left her speechless. A collection of small objects, including a gold ring and a necklace Anna had never seen before. There were also old photographs of people she didn't recognize. On the back of one of the photos was a name, Beatrice, 1995. The date seemed impossible. How could Laura have something from 1995 when she was supposedly only 10 years old? Anna felt a wave of anxiety wash over her. There was something very wrong with Laura, and she didn't know how to explain it to Marcos without sounding paranoid. She decided to put the box back where she found it and act as though nothing had happened. But from that moment on, her panic grew. Laura wasn't just a strange child. Anna began to suspect that Laura wasn't a child at all. That night at dinner, Laura was unusually quiet. Sitting at the table, she observed every move Anna and Marcos made with that same cold, calculated look that had become so familiar. Anna felt a lump in her throat, trying to act normal, but she couldn't shake the feeling that Laura knew more than she let on. "Are you okay, sweetie?" Marcos asked, noticing the girl's silence. Laura smiled, a smile that never reached her eyes. "I'm fine, Dad. Just a little tired." That night, Anna couldn't sleep. The dinner scene replayed in her mind over and over again, along with the images of the metal box she had found in Laura's room. How could she confront her without raising suspicion? Was it possible that her instincts were wrong? The clock read 3 a.m. when Anna finally got out of bed and crept to Laura's room. She opened the door just enough to peek inside. To her surprise, Laura was awake, sitting in bed, staring intently at something Anna couldn't see. "Laura?" Anna whispered, stepping into the room. The girl didn't respond immediately. When she finally turned her head, Anna noticed that her eyes looked different, colder than before. "What are you doing awake at this hour?" Anna tried to sound calm, but her heart was pounding. Laura gave a small smile, the same rehearsed smile as always. "Sometimes I can't sleep," she said, her voice distant, as if she were far older than her appearance suggested. Anna, unsure of what to do, just nodded and left the room, the discomfort growing with every second. The next day, Anna decided it was time to talk to Marcos. During breakfast, while Laura was outside in the garden, Anna told her husband everything she had been observing. She explained the strange behaviors, the box of old objects, and the unsettling conversations. Marcos, though concerned, thought Anna was overreacting. "She's adjusting, Anna. Maybe she's been through things we can't even imagine, and that's why she seems older than she is," he said, trying to reassure her. But Anna knew it wasn't just that. Laura wasn't just mature. She was different. Meanwhile, out in the garden, Laura played with her teddy bear, but her eyes were distant. From where she sat, she could hear her adoptive parents talking, and she knew that Anna's suspicions were growing. Inside, Laura smiled. Everything was happening according to plan. Over the following week, Laura's behavior became even more disturbing. In addition to avoiding interactions with other children, she began spending long periods alone, locked in her room. Anna, now more suspicious than ever, tried to confront her, but Laura always gave vague answers, as if she knew exactly what to say to calm her adoptive mother's nerves. But then something unexpected happened. Laura started experiencing the abdominal pain again, the same pain that had brought them to the hospital before. This time, however, her belly was even more visibly swollen, and it seemed like she was hiding something from her parents. Panicked, Anna and Marcos rushed her to the hospital once more. The on-call doctor, visibly perplexed, ran a series of more detailed tests. Hours later, the doctor called Anna and Marcos into a private room. What he revealed was something neither of them were prepared to hear. Laura was pregnant. The news hit them like a bomb, exploding in the very core of their hearts. Especially for Anna, who had suspected something was wrong, but could never have imagined something so absurd. How can a 10-year-old be pregnant? And worse, who is Laura, really? From that moment on, the mystery surrounding the girl would begin to unravel, bringing to light secrets that neither Anna nor Marcos could have foreseen. The silence in the hospital waiting room was suffocating. Anna and Marcos sat side by side, speechless, trying to process what they had just been told. Laura, their adopted 10-year-old daughter, was pregnant. The news seemed impossible, but the doctor was certain. The tests didn't lie. The shock and disbelief mingled with a growing sense of despair. Marcos held Anna's hand tightly, but his mind raced as he struggled to find any logical explanation. "This doesn't make sense," he muttered, more to himself than to Anna. "She's just a child." Anna, on the other hand, was completely devastated. The suspicions she had harbored for weeks, those unsettling feelings that something was deeply wrong with Laura, had now materialized into a truth she never could have imagined. "She was never just a child," Anna whispered, almost unable to admit what her mind was starting to comprehend. The pieces of the puzzle were finally falling into place. While they waited, the doctor returned with a serious expression. "We need to talk," he said, guiding them into a private consultation room. Anna and Marcos exchanged glances, their hearts pounding as they followed. The doctor closed the door and with a heavy sigh began to explain. "We ran more detailed tests on Laura, and what we found is, to say the least, extraordinary." The doctor opened a file containing the test results and continued. "Laura suffers from a rare condition called hypopituitarism. This disorder causes her body to stop developing normally. Essentially, her body has never physically matured beyond that of a child, but internally she's fully developed. This means that, although she appears to be a young girl, biologically, she is a fully capable adult." The revelation hit Anna and Marcos like a ton of bricks. "What?" Marcos exclaimed, unable to comprehend. She's 10 years old. How can this be?" The doctor shook his head, already anticipating this reaction. "I understand this is hard to believe, but Laura is not 10 years old. Based on the tests and the medical records we've been able to access from institutions across different states, Laura is actually 28 years old." Anna felt her world spinning. Everything suddenly made sense. The mature behavior, the way Laura spoke, the cold and calculated demeanor. She had never been a child. But how did she hide this from us? How did she end up in the orphanage? Anna asked, still in disbelief. She has assumed different identities multiple times, the doctor explained. This type of condition is extremely rare, and in many cases, individuals like Laura live on the fringes of society, using their appearance to manipulate situations. It seems that Laura, or whatever her real name is, has been through several adoption processes before. Marcos, still in shock, looked at Anna with wide eyes. We've been deceived this whole time, the doctor nodded. She used her childlike appearance to deceive various families. She's an adult trapped in a child's body. At that moment, Anna remembered the box of objects she had found hidden in Laura's room. The old photos, the mysterious letters. It was as if all the mystery had finally been revealed, but the truth was darker than she could have ever imagined. And what about the baby? Anna asked, her voice barely a whisper. Will the baby survive? The doctor paused, which only heightened their anxiety. Unfortunately, due to Laura's physical condition, the pregnancy has been extremely complicated. We're preparing her for an emergency cesarean section right now, but the chances of the baby surviving are very slim. Anna closed her eyes as silent tears fell down her cheeks. She didn't know what hurt more, discovering that Laura had never been who she claimed to be, or the looming tragedy of a baby who might not survive. As Laura was taken to the operating room, Marcos and Anna were left alone to process everything. What should they do now? How could they possibly face such an absurd situation? During the long wait, Anna's despair deepened. She began to recall every little moment she had shared with Laura, feeling a mixture of anger and sadness. How could someone live such a cruel lie? Why had Laura done this to them? And more importantly, what had she planned? Hours passed until the doctor finally returned. His expression was somber and tired. The surgery was long, but we managed to stabilize Laura. However, the baby did not survive. Her condition was too severe to allow for a healthy pregnancy. Anna felt the weight of those words hit her like a punch to the stomach. Despite her mixed feelings about Laura, the death of the baby was a tragedy she had not anticipated. Marcos, visibly shaken, embraced Anna, trying to find some comfort amidst the chaos their lives had become. After some time, they were allowed to see Laura. She was lying in a hospital bed, still unconscious, her face pale and her body fragile. A nurse stood by her bedside, silently monitoring her vital signs, but Anna knew that the real battle was yet to come. Laura would wake up, and with her, the questions that needed answers. Anna approached the bed slowly, looking down at Laura's face. The child they had welcomed into their home with love and hope was now a complete stranger. An adult woman with a dark past who had infiltrated their lives like a predator in sheep's clothing. Why? Anna whispered, her voice barely audible as she held Laura's lifeless hand. But she knew that question would only be answered once Laura opened her eyes again. And in that moment, everything would change. The air inside the hospital was thick with tension. Anna and Marcos sat by Laura's bedside, unable to take their eyes off the fragile, unconscious figure before them. The news that Laura, their supposed 10-year-old daughter, was in fact a grown woman had shattered everything they thought they knew. The reality felt like a nightmare from which they couldn't wake. While Laura remained unconscious, time seemed to slow down, leaving them alone with their doubts and fears. How did we not see this before? Marcos whispered, his voice heavy with frustration. How did we not realize we were being lied to the entire time? Anna had no answers. All she could feel was a growing ache in her chest. She had welcomed Laura into their home with love and care, believing they were helping a child start over. Now all of that was wrapped in a fog of uncertainty. I always felt like something was off, Anna murmured, more to herself than to Marcos. But I never imagined it was something this terrible. Hours passed before Laura began to stir in the bed. Her eyes fluttered open slowly, blinking against the dim light of the hospital room. Anna held her breath. The moment she had feared had arrived. Laura was awake, and with her, the truth they so desperately needed. When her eyes finally focused on Anna, Laura's face transformed. She no longer looked like the innocent girl they had taken in. There was no surprise or regret in her expression, only a calmness that was unsettling. Laura knew that her deception had been uncovered and seemed prepared to face the consequences. "You found out," she said, her voice hoarse but steady. It wasn't a question. Anna felt a chill run down her spine. The charade was over, but what came next? Marcos, always more direct, was the first to speak. "Who are you really? How could you do this to us?" His voice was hard, but beneath it was a mix of anger and pain. Laura sighed, adjusting herself in the bed. She was weak, but her gaze remained sharp. "My real name is Natalia," she began, with a disturbing calm. "I'm 28 years old, as you probably already know. And yes, I pretended to be a child so I could be adopted by you." The confession, though expected, hit Anna hard. Every word felt like a direct blow to her heart. "Why?" was all she could manage to say. The question hung in the air, as if everyone was waiting for an explanation that might somehow make sense of this madness. "Why?" Natalia repeated, a slight smile forming on her lips. "Because it's easy. You families desperate to give love to fill the void of what you've lost are the perfect targets. All I had to do was appear vulnerable, like a poor little girl, and just like that, I was living in a new home." The coldness in Natalia's words made Marcos rise from his chair, his body shaking with rage. "You used our pain. You manipulated us, deceived us." His voice trembled, but Natalia didn't flinch. "You wanted to believe," she responded calmly. "I just gave you what you wanted, a daughter, someone to fill the emptiness you felt." Anna was in shock. It was as though the person she had once called Laura had never really existed. "And the baby?" Anna asked, her voice broken by the weight of the tragedy. "Why were you pregnant?" Natalia's smile faded and her expression hardened. "The baby wasn't part of my plan. It was an accident. I knew I was pregnant when I arrived, but I thought I could handle it. I didn't expect things to spiral out of control so quickly." The silence that followed was unbearable. Anna felt a mixture of rage and grief that she didn't know how to express. Natalia hadn't just infiltrated their lives with a monstrous lie. Now the baby, who could have been the only innocent part of this deception, was gone because of her complex web of lies. "You never cared about anyone," Anna muttered, tears streaming down her face. "This was all just a manipulation. We thought we were helping you, loving you, and you never cared." Natalia turned her face away, avoiding Anna's gaze. "I care about myself. I do what I need to survive." Before Anna could respond, the door to the room opened and 2 police officers entered. The hospital staff had already informed the authorities about Natalia's true identity, and they were there to take her into custody for identity fraud and possibly other crimes. Natalia's time had run out. "Miss Natalia, we need you to come with us," one of the officers said firmly, as he handcuffed her gently, mindful of her weakened physical state. As she was led out of the room, Natalia looked back one last time at Anna and Marcos, her eyes cold and empty, showing no signs of remorse. She had played her game, and for a while, she had won. But now, her deception had reached its end. Anna and Marcos sat in silence for a long time after Natalia was gone. The weight of the truth was overwhelming. Everything they had believed they were building with Laura had been nothing more than a cruel illusion. They had been used in a way they couldn't fully understand. And worse, they had lost the chance to protect a baby who had never asked to be a part of this nightmare. Anna, her voice soft and frail, finally broke the silence. "She almost destroyed our lives." Marcos, squeezing her hand tightly, nodded. "Yes, but we're not going to let her destroy what we still have." As the sun began to set outside, casting a warm glow over the room, Anna and Marcos, devastated but still standing, knew they had a long road ahead to rebuild their lives. What was left was a bittersweet sense of relief for having discovered the truth, but also sadness for everything they had lost. Natalia, or Laura, was now in the hands of justice. Her manipulation, her deception, and her crimes would be thoroughly investigated. And finally, Anna and Marcos could begin to move forward, knowing that despite everything being a lie, the truth was now out, and they were free from the dark shadow that had loomed over their family. Days had passed since Natalia, the woman who had pretended to be Laura, was taken into custody. The hospital, once filled with uncertainty and revelations, now felt empty for Anna and Marcos. The silence in their home was heavier than any argument or shout could ever be. The truth had come crashing down on them, and now they had to face the consequences of everything they had lived through. However, their journey was far from over. Anna, sitting at the kitchen table, held a cup of cold coffee that she hadn't touched in hours. Her gaze was fixed on the window, where the wind gently swayed the trees in the garden. Every corner of the house reminded her of Laura, or rather, Natalia. The small everyday interactions, the fake smiles, even the moments when Anna had sensed something was wrong. Now it all made sense. And that was the problem. Everything had been a lie. Marcos had tried to handle the pain differently. He threw himself into work, emotionally distancing himself from the house and from Anna, although he knew that sooner or later he would have to face the reality of what had happened. Deep down, he felt powerless, blaming himself for not seeing the signs earlier. How could I have missed this? How did I not realize the gravity of the situation? He constantly thought. A visit from a detective a few days after Natalia's arrest only deepened the understanding of how complex and dangerous her past really was. Sitting on the living room sofa, Anna and Marcos listened in silence as the detective explained what they had already uncovered about the woman who had infiltrated their lives. Natalia has passed through multiple orphanages and foster homes. She always presents herself as a vulnerable, fragile child, but behind that facade, she has a long record of crimes, theft, identity fraud, and even associations with dangerous individuals, the detective explained, his expression serious. Your case isn't the first, and from what we've been able to gather, she was planning something much more sinister. Anna shuddered at his words. Sinister? What was she planning? The detective sighed before responding. We're still investigating, but it seems she targets families who are grieving or emotionally vulnerable, like you two. She builds a connection, enters their lives, and when they least expect it, she takes everything they have to offer, financially, emotionally, or otherwise. Some of the families who took her in before almost lost everything. Marcos tightened his grip on Anna's hand, attempting to calm her. She planned to do that to us? He asked, his voice trembling. It's very likely, the detective confirmed, but you discovered the truth before she could act. In fact, we believe the pregnancy was what prevented her from carrying out her plan earlier. What began as a simple manipulation got out of control when the baby started affecting her health. The detective's words echoed in Anna's mind. That baby, who might have been the only innocent part of the whole scheme, had died due to Natalia's complex lie. It was painful to think that a new life had been lost before it even had a chance. The guilt, even though it wasn't hers to bear, weighed heavily on her heart. After the detective left, the weight of the conversation settled over them. Anna finally allowed herself to cry, silent tears streaming down her face. Marcos, who always tried to be the strong one, also let himself fall apart. They were broken, and they knew that the path to rebuilding their lives would be long. Natalia, meanwhile, was facing a different fate. As the investigation progressed, more and more of her crimes from the past were uncovered. In court, her defense team tried to argue that her rare condition, which made her look like a child, had contributed to the crimes she committed, but the truth was that Natalia had used this trait to manipulate and harm families for years. The trial was intense and widely covered by the media. The story of a grown woman posing as a child in a fake adoption scheme shocked the country. Many of Natalia's previous victims, people who had gone through the same pain as Anna and Marcos, came forward to share their stories, joining the effort to ensure justice was served. In court, Anna and Marcos were present at every hearing. Although being near Natalia was unbearable, Anna knew she had to face the woman who had nearly destroyed their lives. Sitting in the witness stand, Anna recounted, her voice trembling, how they had taken Natalia into their home with love and hope, only to find out that everything had been a meticulously crafted lie. I wanted to give her a better life, a home. I thought I was helping a child heal, but all I received in return was pain and betrayal. She was never who she said she was, and I'll never forget that, Anna said, as her words echoed through the courtroom. For a brief moment, something flickered across Natalia's face. It wasn't regret, but a hint that Anna's words had struck something deeper. But just as quickly as it appeared, that expression vanished, replaced once again by the cold, calculated woman who had played her part so well. In the end, Natalia was sentenced to a lengthy prison term for identity fraud, deception, and a series of other crimes related to her fake adoptions. For Anna and Marcos, the verdict brought a small sense of closure, but it didn't erase the scars left by the experience. Still, they knew that at least other families would be safe from her manipulations. The path to emotional healing would be long. Anna and Marcos would need to rebuild not just their trust in the world, but also in each other. Many conversations took place over the following weeks. Many tears were shed, and they tried to understand how to move forward after everything that had happened. But slowly, the pain began to ease. They started to realize that despite all the suffering, they still had each other. One afternoon, while organizing some old papers in the garage, Anna found a box of memories. Inside were photos from the time when they were preparing for adoption. Each image stirred a mixture of emotions: hope, anxiety, and that feeling of optimism that had been destroyed by the lie they lived through. However, looking at those photos, Anna realized something important. Despite all the pain, they were still together. The pain hadn't destroyed them, but in some way it had made them stronger. Marcos entered the garage and found Anna sitting on the floor, holding one of the photos. He sat down next to her, took the photo from her hands, and smiled sadly. "We really thought we were starting something new, didn't we?" he said, his voice soft, but without the same weight it once carried. Anna smiled back. "Yes, and in a way we did. Not the way we expected, but we started." Marcos held Anna's hand and looked around the garage filled with memories. "Do you think we'll ever try again? Adoption?" he asked, not in a hurry, just curious. Anna thought for a moment, gazing at the possibility that had once seemed impossible. "I don't know," she answered honestly. "But I think when we're ready, we'll know. And this time, we'll do things differently." Time passed, and weeks turned into months. Natalia's case had faded from the headlines, and little by little, life began to move forward for everyone involved. Natalia, or at least the memory of what she had done, still lingered like a distant shadow, but now Anna and Marcos could look to the future without feeling the weight of the past. They had learned hard but essential lessons. Trust, though shaken, was something they could rebuild. One morning, Anna decided it was time to reorganize Laura's room. Every detail of the room reminded her of something painful, but she knew they couldn't keep that space frozen in the past forever. As she removed the toys and clothes that had never really belonged to a child, she felt a mixture of sadness and relief. That room, which had once represented a lie, was now becoming a space of renewal. Marcos stood at the doorway, silently watching as Anna worked. He knew it wasn't easy for her, but he also knew it was necessary. After a while, he entered and began to help her. Together, they packed everything into boxes, and when they were done, the room was empty. "What do you think about turning this into an office?" Marcos suggested, trying to lighten the mood. Anna chuckled lightly, appreciating her husband's effort. "Or maybe a guest room, or when we have visitors." With the room empty and the house quiet, Anna and Marcos knew they were ready to move forward. It wouldn't be easy to forget everything that had happened, but now they were on a path to healing. Both understood that life would go on, and that, although they had faced the worst, they had survived. Months had passed since the day Natalia was sentenced. Anna and Marcos's lives had slowly started to return to some sense of normalcy, or at least something close to it. The deep wounds left by the deception were beginning to heal, though the scars would remain. Their home, once filled with a heavy silence, now felt a little lighter, as if the weight of their past was gradually lifting. Anna still remembered every detail of the months they had lived through. Sometimes, the memory of it all was overwhelming, but now she could breathe deeply and move forward. For the first time in a long while, the quiet in their home no longer bothered her. It wasn't the silence of a lie lurking in the shadows, but the silence of peace and reflection. Slowly, she and Marcos were rediscovering how to live without that dark presence in their lives. Marcos had also started to reconnect with the things that had once brought him joy. Work, which had become his refuge, began to take a back seat to his personal life again. He found time for Anna and for himself. The couple started talking about the future once more. this time without the constant burden of a painful past. One afternoon, while Anna was organizing some old papers in the garage, she came across a box of memories. Inside were photographs from the time they had been planning for the adoption. Each picture evoked a mix of emotions: hope, anxiety, and the optimism that had been shattered by Natalia's deception. However, as Anna looked at those pictures, she realized something important. Despite all the pain, she and Marcos were still together. The lie had caused deep pain, but it hadn't destroyed them. In fact, it had brought them closer in ways they hadn't expected. Marcos came into the garage and found Anna sitting on the floor, holding one of those photos. He sat down beside her, took the picture from her hand, and smiled softly. "We really thought we were starting something new, didn't we?" he said, his voice calm and without the heaviness it once carried. Anna smiled back. "Yes, and in a way, we did. Not how we expected, but we did." Marcos held Anna's hand, looking around at the memories scattered across the garage. "Do you think we'll ever try again? Adoption?" he asked, without urgency, just curiosity. Anna paused, reflecting on the possibility that had once seemed impossible. "I don't know," she replied honestly. "But when we're ready, I think we'll know. And this time, we'll do it differently." Time passed, and the weeks turned into months. The media had moved on from Natalia's case, and slowly, life began to resume for those involved. Natalia, or at least the memory of what she had done, still lingered like a distant shadow, but Anna and Marcos now felt they could look to the future without feeling weighed down by the past. They had learned difficult but essential lessons. Trust, though broken, was something they could rebuild. One morning, Anna decided it was time to reorganize the room that had once belonged to Laura. Every detail of that space held painful memories, but she knew they couldn't leave the room trapped in the past forever. As she packed away the toys and clothes, Anna felt a mixture of sadness and relief. That room, once the setting for so much pain, would now become a space for something new. Marcos stood at the doorway, watching quietly as Anna worked. He knew it wasn't easy for her, but he also understood that it was necessary. After a while, he stepped in to help. Together, they cleared the room, packing everything into boxes. When they finished, the room was empty. "What do you think about turning this into an office?" Marcos suggested, his voice lighthearted. Anna smiled, appreciating his attempt to ease the tension. "Or maybe a guest room, for when we have visitors." With the room empty and the house now quiet in a way that felt peaceful rather than heavy, Anna and Marcos knew they were ready to move forward. They wouldn't forget what had happened, but now they were on a path of healing. They had faced the worst, and they had survived. That afternoon, they sat in the garden where they used to spend so many quiet moments before everything had fallen apart. The soft breeze brushed against their faces, and they allowed themselves to sit in silence, simply enjoying each other's company. The sun was setting, painting the sky with warm shades of orange and pink. The calm that surrounded them now felt well-earned. "Do you think we're ready to start over?" Marcos asked, looking at Anna. She took a moment to reflect before nodding. "Yes, I think we are. We'll take it slow, without rushing. We deserve that." Marcos smiled, and for the first time in a long while, it was a genuine smile. They knew that the road to recovery would be long, but they also knew that love and truth would always prevail over pain. Natalia's lies had caused damage, but they hadn't destroyed what was most important: Anna and Marcos' ability to love and trust again. As night fell, the couple sat together in the garden, watching the stars slowly appear in the sky. Their home, once filled with deception, was now a place of peace and renewal. They didn't know what the future held, but they were ready to face it together. The darkness that had once loomed over them had been lifted, and for the first time in a long time, Anna and Marcos felt free.